Yo guys, it's slyroh. You already know that today we are back reading some more Danganronpa Zero. Today we're going to be reading Chapter 4 of Volume 2. We are over halfway through Danganronpa Zero, and I was scanning through. Chapter 4 is not a super long chapter, but it is going to be the only one that we read today because Chapter 5 is incredibly long. I would like to try and hopefully be done with this sooner rather than later because I am very, very close to finishing watching the Danganronpa 3 anime, and so once I'm done with that and this, I can finally play Danganronpa V3, and I'm so excited to do that. So let's go ahead and continue on with the story of Danganronpa Zero. We ran into Makoto last episode, and I'm not really sure what's going to happen next, so let's go ahead and just read it and find out. So, Chapter 4. Red Eyes. The whites of the eyes seemed almost painted red. The eyes turned toward their companion, Matsuda Yasuke muttered a question. How long have you been conscious? After blinking for a strangely long time, the person on the bed, Super High School level student council president, Murasame Soshun, opened his mouth slowly. His lips were parched and made a dry sound as he opened his mouth. Alright, so we're back to Matsuda and his... they cut away from the scene after he mentioned Junko's name, and this unresponsive high school council president responded now, so... Alright, always his voice was quiet and hoarse. He sounded like a completely different person in comparison to before. That's how it's been. Matsuda let a grin creep into his expression. He turned to his friend, showing a friendly smile. Don't you think it's stupid to trick me like that? However, Murasame did not make a sound. His eyes showed no emotion as he stared at Matsuda. Matsuda continued in his joking tone to help calm the tense atmosphere. Must have taken a lot of acting on your part. Your actual physiological symptoms and echoes of such have almost completely disappeared. You're easily able to cease being a normal person. We wouldn't have been in this situation had I not seen through your act. Why did you come? But his reply almost came with a violent attitude. As if giving up, Matsuda's expression returned to a more sober look. You said that earlier. You asked those ancient artifacts from the steering committee that I want you to find out, whether you really woke up or not. In response, Murasame only looked away, redirecting his attention to the ceiling and blinking without meaning. To be honest, even I am having my doubts. Matsuda licked his dry lips before continuing. What if I told you those people that you're awake? I'm not really following what's happening here. Hopefully I'll get it as the more I read. Murasame remained silent to Matsuda's questioning. Like a remote-controlled car with a flat battery, his reactions were slow and sluggish at best. Maybe it isn't just acting. Matsuda breathed out a deep sigh. He just answered his own question. Still, I'm sure the news will surprise him. After that, I already guessed what would happen. Didn't they used to say that when people needed to prepare for the worst, desperate times call for desperate measures? At the moment, they're relying entirely on influential people outside the school to cover up this incident. Matsuda looked away from Murasame and slowly gazed at his surroundings. Instead of looking for some kind of reaction from Murasame, he turned to the surrounding electronic equipment, as if trying to communicate with it. After all, they can't afford to make up excuses for this, like allowing a known threat into the general public. They can't just pretend there's no danger. There are also people who say a ruthless person cannot be a good researcher. Well, not that it matters, it depends on how much talent there is. Matsuda stayed talkative and Murasame didn't even shift an eyebrow. Murasame Soshun used to be the kind of person that would at least pretend to laugh no matter how bad the joke was. It seemed like that man was no longer there. The issue isn't that he's feeling depressed. Matsuda sighed. He brushed his hair out of his face. His long narrow eyes looked sharply at Murasame. Wait, Murasame, this isn't a bargaining point, but I do want to tell you. I'm saying this to make sure you understand. The school's intention and the steering committee's intentions are very different. To be truthful, I don't care what those guys think. I just want to know what the hell is happening at the school. So then I'm not pretending. Ooh. Murasame suddenly opened his mouth. Matsuda saw him smile, or maybe he imagined it. In the next moment, any trace of it had completely disappeared. The reaction he just gave him proved that good person was still there. There might be some more to this. Matsuda took off his jacket and untucked his worn-out white shirt, returning to his more familiar appearance. It wasn't because he had become relaxed. If anything, it was just the opposite. It felt more like he was getting down to business. I get it. I don't think you'll be able to escape by just using the sack. Even though you're in the state, you're still worried about the school, and you're willing to fight for it? That's why you're using the sack, so you can escape from the eyes of the steering committee? Matsuda sat down on the bed and leaned in to say something. If I were you, I'd be trying to get used to this kind of power. I'll protect you if I have to. Once I give my full support to those guys, you might even be able to fight along with them. Since it's not always that bad to fight alongside the bad guys. Matsuda once again asked how Murasame's condition was, only to see Murasame would not reply or react. No matter what the force behind it is, I still don't know very much about the incident. That's why I need you to survive and explain it to me. But Murasame lowered his eyelids slightly. At the very least, from what Matsuda could gather, his slight movement meant refusal. Matsuda thought this would be the case, but he had a more pressing question. Though he didn't particularly want to hear the answer which may be given, because it was something he had been told before. That culprit is Izuru Kamakura, correct? That was his question. I heard about it from the staff members. The name of the person who survived the incident and then went missing afterwards was called Izuru Kamakura. But does that person really exist? After a short silence, Murasame finally opened his mouth. Izuru Kamakura killed the student council. His voice was hoarse and unused, but he conveyed his message. Then Izuru Kamakura is real? Masuda listened for a confirmation, however Murasame didn't reply. His mouth remained open, stiff and unmoving. Oi, Murasame, Masuda called out, urging him on. The boy's mouth finally moved again. Whatever. He finished saying only that. Masuda sensed something from his word. So then, that doesn't matter. There was no sense of crisis in the Hope's Peak Academy Murasame held on to. So then, it isn't a known fact whether Izuru Kamakura is the culprit behind the incident or not. Masuda's thoughts went along the lines of that must be it. There was one more thing Masuda needed to hear above all else, he had realized. He breathed in heavily, and before giving himself a chance to hesitate, he asked his question. What about Junko Enoshima? What connection does she have to the incident? All of it. Murasame closed his eyes. It was a blink that seemed to last forever. The next moment he opened his eyes again, his face was unfamiliar. Tears were threatening to spill from his open eyes. He made a gritting sound with his teeth bared. Praise expression turned into one of pure exhaustion. Then Masuda realized the person named Murasame Soshun was no longer there. The man they called super high school level student council president was completely gone. The boy who was familiar to him had met his end. That thing opened its mouth painfully wide. It began to spit out words that did not even sound like words. I must kill. Must kill. I must kill. Who are you talking about? Masuda placed his hand on that thing's bedside and looked down to him and asked. Huge red, sore eyes turned toward Masuda briefly. Enoshima, Junko Enoshima. The inside of his body was beaten by something as he was overtaken by shock. It was the beating of his own heart. The harsh impact it had on Masuda to lose his own voice. Suddenly that thing screamed out, ah! Is he just like randomly dying right now? Blood rushed to his face, flushing it to a dark red, making him look like a demon. Enoshima Junko, blah, 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 blah. Then what is the second one? Oh, Junko Enoshima. Okay, it's all still repeated. Okay. That thing continued to scream horribly. He sounded like a broken record. Kill, 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 kill. He kept screaming and yelling over and over again, continued to scream. As that thing screamed with his entire body, Masuda began to feel a little cold. It wasn't that he was composed. The feeling was lost. It was as if his body temperature itself had dropped. He already understood everything. About the worst large incident in Hope's Peak Academy's history. Murasame Soshun's true enemy and Hope's Peak Academy's true enemy was most likely Junko Enoshima. That was his conclusion, but he had already guessed it as the worst case scenario. Masuda had no choice but to establish his despair-inducing resolve. So then I'm out of options. I passed the point of no return a long time ago. Something around his lower abdomen began to bubble and boil. Still hot, his whole body became energetic. Masuda turned to Murasame. Hey, I said earlier that I'd protect you if I had to, didn't I? He spoke in a calm tone of voice. There's also someone else I have to protect at all costs. They're hopeless if I don't protect them, so I've decided I'll sacrifice anything to protect them. As the words left his mouth, they were swallowed by screams. Even so, Masuda continued to talk. I'm awful. I don't particularly want to think about that. I forgot the person I care for, and if they died, that thought is unbearable, so I'll protect them. No matter what happens, I'll protect them. As Masuda spoke softly, he placed both of his hands around that thing's neck. Kill, 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 kill. Even so, that thing continued to shout out. He didn't seem to understand what was happening. If there's a grudge against me for this, then there's a grudge against me. Masuda closed his eyes and thought to himself, I don't mean that person. I mean I'll hold a grudge against myself. In the next moment, Masuda gathered all his power into his hands and squeezed. Finally, the incredible loud voice, the screams of that thing had come to a stop. The bed to which he was assigned started to shake with a loud rattling sound. Masuda was leaning forward, his hair falling in front of his eyes, however didn't lose his grip. Instead, he tightened it. He put all his power into his hands. Quickly, the bed's shaking subsided. The feeling of what his hands were wrapped around disappeared. The feeling of that thing ending. After a while, Masuda finally opened his eyes again. All the muscles in his body felt exhausted and tense, as if he had become a solid piece of iron. Sweat dripped from his forehead, landing on his long eyelashes. He blankly turned his line of sight toward that thing on top of the bed. The light from those eyes had disappeared. All that was left was a deep darkness. Those eyes held a darkness deeper than the color of darkness itself. Alright, so I guess that chapter was mostly just Matsuda trying to get information from Murasame, and Murasame, I mean, giving some, but not really, and then kind of going crazy, as if he's, like, possessed by something, and then Matsuda just having to kill him. So, that was that entire chapter. And like I said, Chapter 5 is a really long chapter that I don't have enough time for today, so that is going to be a separate video, but I am going to do my best to get through Danganronpa Zero as quickly as I can, because I'm more excited to play more Danganronpa video games, because there's only one major one left. So yeah, let me know what you guys thought about that. That was an interesting chapter. At least it wasn't, you know, involving a bunch of characters that were awful, because that tends to happen in a lot of these. So you know, we'll see how this goes moving forward. We have, you know, still a decent amount of this story left, but yeah, it should be interesting. So if y'all are excited for more, let me know, and I will see you all next time. So until then, peace out.